G'day guys, welcome back to another video. Today's video, I'm going to be giving you a spoiler review for Wonder Woman. If you're after a non-spoiler review, basically here it is. The movie is okay. There are a lot of problems with it. CGI, plot holes, things that don't make sense at all. Acting is completely fine. Everyone is great in their roles. And if you're going into this movie, you're wanting a little bit more Wonder Woman, by all means, you pretty much will like this. Tonally, it's very, very different from the first Wonder Woman. But if you want to see a little bit more Wonder Woman, you'll get that in this film. If you really like the scenes between Diana and Steve, you're going to get a lot more of that in this film. And if you just prefer the Wonder Woman films when, you know, Diana isn't actually Wonder Woman, where she's just sort of more a civilian Diana, you're going to love this film. A lot of this film is just Diana being Diana rather than actually showing off Wonder Woman. The villains were okay. The plot was and hands down, the first Wonder Woman was better. So that's basically the non-spoiler review. There's not much more I could say without getting into spoilers, but if all that sounds good or bad to you, that's how you're going to sort of feel about the movie. Let's get into spoilers. Here is your spoiler warning. Get out of the video if you don't want anything spoiled. Alright, so you've had enough time, let's get into it. Wonder Woman 1984 is basically a plot around the theme of greed and what you would exchange to get what you most desire. There is this thing called the Dreamstone, which is basically what brings all Wonder Woman and all the other characters into each other's lives. This Dreamstone has this power imbued in it where it can go ahead and grant everyone's wish. However, the Dreamstone was created by a god of lies, or a god of mischief, if you will, where it's kind of like the monkey paw, where you grant the wish, but there is a trick tied to it. It basically takes away as much as it gives back. So I thought it was a really interesting premise to base a movie on this, because it's not going to be like a big CGI monster or big fight. It's sort of a battle of humankind, and that's what I really, really liked about the first Wonder Woman, is that, you know, when Diana was going through thinking Ares was influencing these guys to go to war, and that was all Ares' influence, and Steve Trevor was just like, you know what, mankind just might be shit. I like that sort of approach to villains. The villains that aren't really there, these things that you can't punch, these things you can't attack, it's human nature. So I really like that premise where you go ahead and tackle humans' greed. You can't fight that. It's just a lesson that Diana has to then come to terms with and actually just learn that people are greedy and they're willing to give up almost anything to get what they really want. I thought that was a really interesting premise, but the film itself just stumbled. In this movie, there are so many plot holes, it's actually kind of sickening. And I'm not sure how this was greenlit, but it completely shows to me that there was absolutely no roadmap. And there was very, very little effort made to keep this movie consistent with the previous released, but time set in the future DC movies, like Batman v Superman and Justice League. It's just very, very messy. And I'll tell you what I mean about that in a second. But let's get into the actual characters. Maxwell Lord, absolutely very, very interesting. Steals the show whenever he's on screen. Now, Chris Pines as Steve Trevor and Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman, again, were great. Their on-screen chemistry was good, but nowhere near as good as the first movie. Kind of a role reversal in this one, where instead of Wonder Woman being the fish out of water, coming to a brand new world, it's Steve Trevor coming to kind of the future for him. So it's not as big as a jump as Wonder Woman exploring a whole new world she'd never experienced before. It's just Steve Trevor coming from, I think, 1918, I think it was, to 1984. So it didn't really sort of hold the same impact as the first one. And especially since we've seen it in the first one and done better, it just makes this one look lazy and as, I guess, a cop-out. Kristen Wiig as the Cheetah was, to me, a huge lost opportunity. I've always seen Cheetah as one of Wonder Woman's biggest enemies. And for me in this film, Cheetah really just got disrespected and pushed aside, almost to the point where if you took her out of the film, there really wouldn't be any difference to the main plot, and it would actually free up some time in the movie so the movie could feel a lot more concise. And that's one of my issues with this movie. You could cut about 20 to 30 minutes out of this film just to sort of tighten it up a little bit and actually tell a cohesive story. This film just juggled way too many plot points, and it just felt fumbled. So take the cheetah out, and then you're left with Maxwell Lord. That is great, where his Dreamstone, or when he becomes a Dreamstone, it shows the fragility of mankind. It shows that people are willing to go and give up absolutely everything to get what they most desire. That should have been the main villain. The cheetah felt like she was put in just to have a battle toward the end of the movie. In terms of the soundtrack was really good. The score was fantastic. Now I do want to start picking apart the villains one by one, so I'm going to be focusing on one at a time and discussing the plot with those as well. So to me, a movie is only as good as its villains, and in this movie, they just weren't as good. Kristen Wiig's character, she has a very sort of syndrome kind of backstory. It's very much like Jim Carrey's Riddler in Batman. Syndrome. You have Jamie Foxx's Electro in Amazing Spider-Man 2. Kind of Mysterio from Spider-Man Far From Home, where someone's basically obsessed or looks up to an idol, and that idol somehow does wrong to them or anything like that, and then that person then despises their idol and then goes ahead and tries to eliminate them. Kristen Wiig's cheetah kind of is like that. She sees how confident Diana is and wishes that she had that. And she actually makes a wish with the Dreamstone that she was as confident, as sexy, and whatever as Diana. Now, as we discussed with this Dreamstone, it's like a monkey's paw, where you go ahead, you wish for something, but it also takes something away. So in the start of the movie, she is seen as this kind, humane sort of person. But as she becomes more powerful and more confident in all sorts of stuff that she wished for, it's actually taking away her humanity, which is what the trade-off is. You then start to see her slowly evolve as the film goes on. So she's kind of wearing more and more cheetah attire and then more fur and all sorts of stuff. So it kind of slowly and gradually brings her transition to the full cheetah to the forefront. I thought that was a nice touch and something smart, but I don't feel like they utilized the cheetah character that well to the point where they could just go ahead and take her out of the film and nothing would have changed. She then gets a second wish when it was all kind of established in the first part of the film that you can only get one wish from the Dreamstone. Anyway, she got a second wish for whatever reason, and she wished to become an apex predator, and obviously the side effect was that she was turned into the cheetah. There was terrible CGI, and the fight scene between her and Diana basically occurred in night. I think this was to blur the terrible CGI, because if she showed up in broad daylight, I can guarantee you she would look like shit. The film never ever really gives you a long time where you can go ahead and look at the cheetah completely to really soak in how she actually looks and what the final design came out to be. It's always a shot from about here up, or it's her moving super quickly in the dark, so everything's all blurred. It was interesting to see her development and her transition from this nerdy, lack of self-confidence kind of person to someone with more confidence, but again, could have done without her. And it's a shame because, as I said before, one of the biggest Wonder Woman characters or villains, and she just got mishandled. Going on to Maxwell Lord, again, as I said before, he really did steal the show in this. And again, I really liked that sort of that play around the idea of what someone is willing to give up, or what greed they're willing to sort of indulge in to get what they really want. What is someone willing to sacrifice to obtain their deepest, darkest desires? Maxwell Lord constantly kept trying to escalate his power and his possession of power. And his trade-off obviously was that every time he grants a wish, it was taking away some kind of life force. It was slowly killing him. So the more powerful he became, the weaker he actually became physically. When someone then goes ahead and takes a wish, he will take something back. So he sort of starts taking their life force away. So he starts healing over time. You see in the movie, he starts bleeding from his eyes, his ears, his nose, everything, because he's being so harshly impacted by the trade-off of these wishes. Tonally, this movie is very different to the first Wonder Woman, obviously because it's set in a very different timepiece. I think Patty Jenkins wanted it to be a little more goofy, lighthearted, colourful, a bit more sort of relevant and related to the time period of 1984. You can see this in the opening mall scene where people were just very, very goofy looking, almost to the point where it was kind of distracting how goofy and over the top the acting was in the first opening scene. I was kind of thinking, is this meant to be a comedy bit, or is this just poor acting, or I don't know. It just seemed a little bit sort of out of place. It didn't seem like it belonged, especially with the rest of the movie where that wasn't really goofy at all. Just the opening scene, I think she was trying to make it, fun and inviting and getting people into the mood of the movie, despite that being its kind of own isolated weird thing. It's kind of hard to explain. Now, going on to the actual fight scenes themselves, there really aren't many. You get an opening mall sequence. It then takes about an hour to an hour and 20 minutes before you see Wonder Woman again. That hour and 20 minutes is pretty much just Diana. Now, she is currently losing her powers because she wished for Steve to come back, but it's not really Steve. It's sort of Steve. Diana sees Steve, but it's really this other guy. It doesn't make sense. But Diana sees Steve in this other guy's body. I don't know. It's weird. But as a result of her bringing back the person that she loves, she is losing her powers, and that is her takeaway. So now I'm going to go ahead and get into the plot holes. These are the ones that I noticed, and they just really, really annoyed me. I don't know. Let's get into it. I wrote them in my phone, so let's get into it. So first of all, Steve Trevor flying a plane. His only experience in flying a plane is back in World War I. Things have changed from World War I up to 1984. So he gets in a much more newer high-tech plane and was able to go ahead and fly it without any troubles. I could go ahead and buy that, but he doesn't know how an escalator works. He doesn't recognize a trash can, but he somehow knows how to fly a modern high-tech plane. It doesn't make sense in the slightest. Diana was saying that she was trying to think of a way to go ahead and make the plane invisible, and that she starts doing this thing with her hand, and she was talking about how one time they could only do it on a cup, and that was the best they could do. And then she somehow miraculously knows how to turn the whole plane invisible. Again, you then get the invisible jet, which we all know what Wonder Woman has in the comics, which was a nice sort of throwback to that sort of time. But don't open it up to saying, oh, I could only do a cup and we never learned from there, to doing a whole fucking moving plane. Like, it doesn't really make that much sense again. It also just kind of feel like you're just throwing different things at the audience or in the story just so it makes sense with the plot. We need to escape this. Oh, that's right. We'll turn this whole thing invisible. Where'd you learn how to do that? We just kind of did it sort of off screen, but hey, this plane's now invisible, just accept it. It doesn't really make sense. You've never seen her do it before, so as an audience, it's kind of a bit jarring to be like, well, where'd that come from? Another plot hole was Diana's loss of powers. She completely struggled to break a just normal padlock off a door. And it's like, okay, she's gone to the point where she's so weak, where she's struggling to pull a bit of metal off a door. You then cut to her running down this road, pushing giant trucks with ease. So it's like, is she losing her powers? Is she not? Why does she struggle that much with a door? But then she can go ahead and push these cars, running at the same speed as these cars are driving, pushing a truck sort of sideways, blocking these bullets. I'm like, is she losing her powers? Is she not? Can we please just decide at what speed she's losing it? Because if she's able to push these trucks, she would have no issue just pulling a normal padlock off a door. It made, again, no sense. Another thing was that nothing that happened in this film has ever been recorded. So they kind of go down a cheap, I hate this. I hate this. It's an absolute cheap way of getting out of any kind of consequences, is that everyone renounces their wishes and there's no consequences and everyone is back to normal. I'm not too sure if people just don't have a memory of this because they renounce all their wishes, but it's zero consequence ending because, you definitely can't have a consequence or a change because this movie has to tie into a DC lineup. Why even do this? Why even have the stakes go that high? You could have told a much more human story like in the first Wonder Woman, where it's just a lot more gripping and compelling. You don't have to go to this world tyrant villain and then bring it all back with zero consequences. It makes no sense. Another plot hole is that she learns how to fly in Wonder Woman 1984. She learns how to fly, which is awesome. I love it. But then you start to think, did she fly in Justice League? No. Did she fly in Batman v Superman? No. We've never seen her fly in these other movies that are set after this movie, which tells the audience that she knows how to fly, but she is now neglecting or omitting to fly. I'm sure flying with Doomsday would have been helpful. I'm sure being able to fly when she's falling, trying to catch her sword and the Flash has to help her, would have been helpful. I'm sure flying when they're protecting the mother boxes or trying to get away from Steppenwolf would have been helpful. All these things just start creating some inconsistencies in the timeline, and again, it does not make sense. Another thing is the lasso. It's kind of like Captain America's shield, but a lot worse. It doesn't follow any set of rules. The length is really inconsistent, where she'll go ahead and try to attach itself to something, or it's too short. But then as she's falling, she's on the ground, she's able to go ahead and attach herself to a flying plane. Like, how long or short is this thing? Can it go ahead and be as long as it wants? Or does it have a set limit of length? Like, you've shown two examples where it's too short, and you've shown another example where it's, as long as it needs to be for the plot. There is no consistency with this. Makes no sense. There was also this other bit toward the end of the movie where Maxwell Lord is broadcasting himself to all the TVs and all that sort of stuff to try to get everyone to make a wish so he can basically rule the world. Wonder Woman did this thing where she tries to attempt to lasso him to stop him broadcasting, but there's a big wind cycle in this room that they're in that prevents a lasso from getting to Maxwell Lord and pulling him away to stop the broadcast. You see this, and she attempts it multiple times to say the lasso is trying to get there, but this wind tunnel is preventing it. So to the audience, it tells them the lasso is useless in this situation. Every time Diana tries, it is not going to work because it keeps getting blown away. That conveys to the audience that that lasso is now not an option to stop Wonder Woman. That's one thing in her arsenal that is gone. You cannot use it. All of a sudden, after this sort of monologue speech, we zoom out and we see that the lasso has been attached to his foot just after being shown that it cannot reach him physically at all. The wind didn't slow down, nothing else changed, but for some reason that lasso has then been able to attach to his foot. She's then using the lasso on his foot to broadcast out her speech to the world. Everyone then renounces their wishes and everything's a happy ending. Like, I didn't like that at all. It made no sense. It's really inconsistent, especially when you're showing people, hey, this particular scenario doesn't work. Here's multiple attempts of it not working, and now we're gonna zoom the camera in, and oh look, it's actually worked the last time. We just did it off screen. Hope you don't mind. I hate that. So as you can see, there are a lot of plot holes in this movie. In terms of CGI, as I said before, there were a lot of scenes where you could tell people were on wires, unfinished. Some scenes looked great, but overall I just thought the first Wonder Woman movie was just a lot more concise, it was a lot more compelling, the story was better, everything was just sort of tight, and it just sort of seemed like they knew what they wanted to tell. In this movie, they were sort of juggling the Cheetah storyline, the Maxwell Lord storyline, Steve Trevor being the fish out of water storyline, Diana Prince losing her powers storyline, coming to terms with people's greed and all that sort of stuff, and then renouncing everything, and it was just muddled, completely muddled. And again, I just don't feel like Patty Jenkins or sort of anyone in this movie really had a roadmap of how to tell a good story as well as fitting it into a pre-existing DCEU timeline. Now, there is one post-credit scene. It's a mid-credit scene. There is no end credit, so you don't need to wait for that. But basically, it's Linda Carter, who, if you don't know, was the original Wonder Woman series back in the 70s or 80s. I think it's 75 or early 80s. So what happens is that you see a hooded figure go ahead. This pole comes down. She goes ahead and just catches it, turns to the camera, says something like, "I've been doing this for a long time," or something like that. And obviously, as her face reveals, it's Linda Carter, and people who are fans of Wonder Woman or know of this realize that it's actually, the original Wonder Woman. And that was pretty much it. You don't need to sort of hang around to it. It doesn't add anything to the storyline. I don't know. As I said before, look, the story was full of plot holes. It didn't really make sense, but if you just want to go in and sort of switch off and not really think about it, you're going to have a good time. If you really like the Diana sequences from the first Wonder Woman, there's a lot more of that in this one. If you're looking for actual Wonder Woman footage, there's not really that much. Fight scenes last for maybe 1 to 2 minutes, and they're very, very spread apart. The villains, Maxwell Lord was great. Cheetah was a waste of potential, to the point where I think she could have been just cut out. Lots of plot holes. Doesn't really make sense. I think it was a really weak sequel to a really good first Wonder Woman, despite the third act. But Wonder Woman 1 was by far a much better film. If I had to rate the first Wonder Woman, it'd probably be about a 7, 7.5. This one will probably have to be about a 6. So guys, if you liked the video, please go ahead, like, comment, subscribe. If you want me to review anything else, let me know down in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for watching. I know it's going to be a long one, but I just had a lot of thoughts around this one. So please go ahead, like, comment, subscribe. It really does help out the channel, and I'll see you in the next one. All right, bye.